Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. So, in the intro montage of this episode, the main portion of it was spent getting the SC's old battery mount tray pulled out of its trunk and cleaned up and ready to be converted into an actual battery box. So the SC's old battery tray sat in the trunk back here and was bolted down through these 4 holes that you can see light coming through. Now, I'm going to utilize those 4 holes, but I'm going to improve upon what was there and, like I said, convert it into an actual battery box. So the battery's out, that plate is out, and I'm ready to begin fabrication work. I have everything sitting on the welding table right here, and the battery's roughly put into place where it's going to sit at. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 holes. And what I need to do is to make a frame that does not impede these fasteners from going in place, but what that does allow me to actually hold the battery in its spot and in its location. I have an idea of how I want to do this, but that's going to require me running down to Home Depot and getting some good old-fashioned Home Depot racing aluminum to bring my idea to fruition. Now, the actual tie-down portion of this is fairly simple. You can see there is a hole here, and there's another corresponding hole in the rear frame rail on the car that simple hook, I don't know, you can call them like J-hooks or something like that, actually fasten to and hold the battery down in place. So that will act as the retention method for holding the battery against the battery mount plate, and against the box rather, and the box itself will hold the battery in place and prevent it from moving around. Should be pretty simple, pretty straightforward, but there is one thing that I want to do before we go to Home Depot Racing and get the materials for that. Now, you may have noticed in the first scene of the intro montage, this right here. And this is what I'm affectionately going to refer to as Big Bertha. Big Bertha is a 3-foot long, 3/4 inch drive breaker bar from Harbor Freight. It's an Icon piece. And my reason for buying this is to break the crank bolt free on the SC here. Now, the reason why I want to do that is because I dug out the Mark IV's old fluid damper. So this is an SFI approved aftermarket balancer, damper, whatever terminology you want to use. But I'm going to put this on the engine in place of the factory balancer that is on it currently, that is prone to coming apart and causing issues that way. I don't want to deal with that. So since I have this and it doesn't cost me any money, I'm going to take the old balancer off, put this one on, and everything should be good to go and should be no worries with anything moving forward. All right, now if I know myself as well as I think I do, I probably red Loctited the balancer bolt, so that's why I need all this leverage to make this work. So the car is in 5th gear currently to provide something to push or pull against, I guess. And I have my adapters set up here, as well as some a moving blanket to act as a pad should this thing break free and kind of freewheel at me. So if I can get this in a position where I can actually really wrench on it, then we'll be golden to try to break this free. So hopefully this goes well. Well, I'm moving the car. It isn't exactly what I wanted to do, but maybe if I keep working this a little bit, I can get this to break free. Well, I don't think that's going to work right now, so I need to reconvene and readjust how I am approaching that and see if I can get it another way. Well, not a whole lot of success getting the crank bolt broken loose on the SC, but YouTube University showed me a trick that we'll try out later on in the video to hopefully be able to break this thing loose without much effort. But for right now, I'm going to shift focus to knocking out this battery tie-down box deal. So the plan is to use this strip right here on these sides. It will tie down, or it will hold the battery in place from the edge over to this, and then from this over to the edge. That'll take care of that side. And then the other three sides, I have this aluminum L channel that I'll use between the bolt holes here, along the back side, from the edge over to here, here over to the edge, so on and so forth. And the reason that I'm using L channel for that is it increases the footprint that I'll be welding substantially. And the larger the footprint is, the more securely this is going to be held in place, and the less issues that I'll have to deal with the battery moving around. That's the idea, at least. So without further ado, let's go ahead and square this battery up on the plate first, and then do some drafting and locating and everything else. And before too long, it'll be time to start welding and to get this thing squared away and ready to go back into the car. The SC's new battery bracket is all wrapped up, and it fits nicely, the battery fits nicely, all is well. So the battery is located, and I noticed that the tie down, I only have one of my J-bolts, and it's kind of crusty. So I am going to get at least 2 new J-bolts, and then get everything put together and everything will be good to go. But I'll feel much better now that this battery is actually retained in one location. It won't be bouncing around or anything like that. And it's just one less thing that I have to be concerned about as I'm driving this car and operating it. So now we arrive back at the crank bolt. And after I was not able to loosen it by hand earlier, we're going to use the starter to aid us. So this is kind of sketchy, and you really, really need to be careful if you decide to try this on your car. And hopefully it goes well for me so we don't end up with another catastrophic video title. But what I am doing is I have my big breaker bar attached to the crank bolt. And what I'm going to do is disconnect all of the coils, disconnect all of the injectors, so that way the engine can't somehow fire as I'm doing this. And I'm going to bump the starter. And if all works the way that it should, the starter will push against the breaker bar, and in the orientation that I have everything right now, as a 2JZ rotates clockwise, and the breaker bar is put in such a location, or in such an orientation rather, that it can't fling out from under the car. So as the engine turns over, it's going to push against the breaker bar, push against that bolt, and if all goes well, then it should break it loose, and it should be able to pull the balancer off and get the fluid damper on there. All right, let's see if this works. Fingers crossed. That Crankbolt's really on there. So that did not work, but it was worth a shot at least. So I'll have to figure out yet another way to do this. The saga continues. Well, today's been a lot of fiddling around and doing some electrical diagnosis. Now, the SC has a couple of pretty cool little courtesy lights. It has one right here that is around the actual ignition switch, and it also has one down in the footwell area. Now, these kind of just stopped working, and I thought it was burnt bulbs. The bulbs did in fact end up being burnt up, so I replaced them, but still no change. So I went through and I rewired at least the ignition switch light, and I have it set to a 12 volt switch circuit at this point in time. So anytime the key is on, that light illuminates. It works fine, but it's been nagging me that it doesn't work properly. The way that it normally works is when you open the door, the light will illuminate for a period of time and then shut off. The Arista was the same way, and the Mark IV would have been the same way with its all of its factory components in place. So I started digging, and you can see down here kind of the nightmare rat's nest of wiring, and this is mostly factory wiring in here. But I traced all of this down to the integration relay, and that's a relay that is responsible for a number of little features like that in the SC. And in inspecting this, if I zoom you guys in, and if you see the two blue resistors to the left of my thumb right there, the leftmost looks fine. The one closer to my thumb looks like it is burnt up. So I traced the ground wire, as both of those wires for the lights both had power to them, which signifies to me if the lights aren't working but there's power, then it has to be a ground signal that actually causes them to function. And I traced that wire the whole way back through all of this, through one of the plugs on the back side of the junction block here, through the integration relay, this second pin right here. And if you follow the printed circuit board, this second pin goes up, around, over here, and terminates at this post right here. And if we look at that post, that corresponds to that burnt up resistor on this side of the circuit board. The circuit board's burnt up, or at least that resistor is, and that seems to be the most likely culprit for causing those lights to not work. So this is a whole lot of work and a whole lot of nonsense just to make a couple of lights light up. But by the time everything is said and done, and I get the integration relay either fixed, or if I get another one to put in its place, to have those lights light back up, that'll be a really cool feature the car will have, something that, at least for me, it seems like the effort is worth it. And it'll be cool when everything's said and done. So I have everything all torn apart here, and once I decide exactly what I'm going to do with the integration relay, then I can put it all back together and hopefully have working lights at that point in time. Now, in the process of doing all of this, I did test continuity on that ground wire for both of the lights, and there is continuity there. However, continuity doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. And continuity is just testing to see if there is, or if there is connection between one side of the wire and the other. Now, continuity is a great way to test electrical circuits, but just because there is contact from one side of the wire to the other, or that there is a complete wire there, that doesn't necessarily mean that the wire isn't contacting something else, causing something to short, and causing something like this resistor to burn up. So I'm also in the process with this wire right here of running a new ground wire. And I'll run that to the footwell light. I'll run that up to the ignition switch light, and I'll reconnect the ignition switch to the power source that it had before. And hopefully by the time all of that is said and done, this will function appropriately, everything will be cool, and I'll have my lights back. All right, I know we're jumping around a little bit in this episode, but I just readjusted the parking brake shoes so now they actually grab, and I sprayed some penetrating lube on the balancer bolt. So we're going to give this a shot again real quick and see what happens. So fingers crossed that the combination of those two things will actually allow me to get this bolt free. Would be sweet if I can. All right, here we go. Ooh, that bolt is in there. Man. All right, no cigar that way. So the Crankbolt saga continues. All right, so we're going to change up the tactic and the angle of approach with this. So my buddy Mike is up in the car, and what he's going to do is hold the brakes down so I can get underneath of this and have a little bit better leverage and a better angle to really lay into this bolt. So I guess without further ado, Mike, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, you got the brake down?
Woo!
Here we go. All right. Good Lord. There it went. All right, hold on a second. I knew if I just got the right leverage on that, I could get it to break loose. I just couldn't get the right leverage. And after all of that fighting, we have a removed balancer bolt. With the old crank bolt removed, it's now time to actually pull the old balancer off and install the new one. So I may have shown this earlier in the video, I can't remember, but this is what I am putting on the car. This is an old fluid damper that was on the Mark IV years ago, and it's just been sitting around ever since. So rather than have it continue to sit around, I figured this would be a good application for it and a good reason to put it back into service. In addition to the new balancer, I also bought a new crankbolt, as the old one was pretty crusty and I wanted to kind of beautify this thing up a little bit. In regards to beautifying this up, you can see that the old pulleys are kind of a little bit rough around the edges. So my buddy Nick stopped down yesterday and he gave me his portion of the trade that we'll end up doing. These parts in exchange for work that I'll do on his Mark IV Supra in the future that will be an upcoming project. And what I have is this set of purple Powerhouse Racing accessory drive pulleys. So we have the alternator pulley, the idler pulley, the power steering pump pulley, and the water pump pulley with this cover that can go over top of it if I so choose to use it. So some pretty cool stuff here, and it'll really make the front of the engine look nice and look cool, especially with all of the little purple accents throughout the rest of the engine bay. So the first thing that I need to do in this whole parts swap and exchange is I need to get the old balancer off of the engine. I dug out my balancer puller set right here, and I need to pull the serpentine belt off so that way I can get in there, pop the old balancer off, and get the fluid damper ready to go on. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get to it, and let's get this engine back together. Well, the whole front side of the SC's engine is torn apart, and I'm just about ready to install the new balancer. But I'm going to do a little bit of detail work first, and something that I've wanted to do, and the idea popped into my head for this, and I think it'll be really neat. So I've gone titanium fastener crazy. I ordered fasteners to replace a bunch of bolts on the front side that I have off currently. I'm going to replace all of the coil pack bolts, a few other odds and ends that I'm not exactly happy with. And since purple is the theme color of this car, well, I thought it would be neat with this lower timing cover that has the timing marks on it, as well as the fluid damper itself. I ran over to the local Hobby Lobby and I got some purple model paint. And what I'm going to do is to repaint these red designations here purple, and all of the text on the outside of the balancer I'm going to go through and apply purple paint there as well. It's the little details like that that I think are really cool and that I look for in builds like this. So I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and do that detail work on this car, and I think it'll make everything look cool and it'll add my own little touch to it. Well, shifting gears from engine work on the SC, since I'm waiting on fasteners to arrive, we can now shift focus back to the interior, where I am in the middle of replacing the integration relay to hopefully reestablish a couple of interior lights to reestablish their functionality. So, if you remember from earlier in the video, we have this burnt up resistor in the original integration relay, and to the left, I have the new old replacement one. And you can see that the resistors are in great shape. And if I pop the board out of here, the backside looks to be good to go as well. No burnt smell or anything like that, as opposed to this one that definitely has a little bit of an odor to it. But all of that being said, I think the new one should be good to go, but the only way that I'll be able to tell with any amount of certainty is to finish putting everything back together and to power the car up and test it and see if all of this work was for the good or for the worse of the project. All right, it's the moment of truth. Let's see if all of that electrical fiddling was actually worth it. So you can see that the battery is on. And if I come over here and I open the driver's side door, the key ring light or the ignition switch ring light and the footwell light should both illuminate. So, hey, look at that. We have the footwell light. And we have the key ring light. So now, we wait for a few moments. They go off, just as they should. So it was, in fact, that burnt up resistor that was causing the issue. And that, coupled with the new ground wire that I ran, that seems to have solved the problem. So the effort was worth it, and it may seem ludicrous to put that much effort into just a couple of little lights. But if you guys are as anal retentive as I am about things like this, the fact that those lights are illuminated now and the fact that they work correctly, that's a huge, huge step in the right direction, and that really, really makes me happy. Well, the SC's interior is all back together. The lights are working, everything's working, and everything looks really good. So, center console and everything good to go. I replaced the trim piece that I broke, or the dash panel that I broke rather, which is this one that goes up along the top of the center console. But I have another interior piece, another modification that I've wanted to do for a long, long time, and I finally pulled the trigger on it. So what I'm going to do is to swap the steering wheel out. Let's go back to the car real quick. The steering wheel, the factory one that's on the car, is really chewed up, and it's really seen better days. So the top side of it, you can see that the leather is torn, the whole outside circumference of it is really worn out, and it's just seen better days. So, what I bought for it is another factory Lexus wheel, but it's one that I think will make the interior look really clean and really neat. And that is this right here. This is a 3-spoke Lexus RX 300 steering wheel. And it's missing the airbag right now, but that will be here later today, according to the tracking information that I have. but these are supposed to be a direct swap over to the SC, and rather than the worn out 4-spoke wheel, I can put this much better condition and much cooler looking 3-spoke wheel in its place, and I think it'll look really neat. So let's go ahead and pull the factory wheel off and get ready for this 3-spoke wheel to go on and ready for this whole thing to be wrapped up once the airbag arrives later today. That is always the sketchiest part of pulling steering wheels off, especially ones that have airbags, is disconnecting the old yellow connector. Now, typically, you won't have a lot of capacitance that's involved with this, or I should say, at least with the experiences that I have had. But you always run the risk of, as you detach the airbag, it deploying. So if you noticed, I kept my face and my head clear of the airbag and of, if it were to go off, from kind of busting me in the face, because that wouldn't be a great deal. But managed to get it off, no issues, no harm, no foul. And at this point, I need to pull this center nut off of the old steering wheel, and then fight this off of the steering column. There we go, easy enough. So the factory clock spring is still here, and hopefully I'll be able to make that work. There's a little wiring harness with a connector in here, which if the RX airbag doesn't fit, then I'll more than likely have to do some screwing around and all of that to make it work. But let me grab the RX wheel, let's test fit it, and see how all of this is going to work together. All right, let's try the connector first. Connector seems to go in. Run the airbag wire over. You will plug in. Man, that looks a lot better. I like that much more. It splines on appropriately. And provided that this connector does clip into the clock spring correctly, which the clock spring, if you guys aren't familiar, is this piece right here. You can see all the yellow designations and the airbag wire. That is the electrical connection for everything going on in the steering wheel. So as the wheel turns, the clock spring turns with it, and it maintains power, ground, signals, all things like that that would otherwise be very difficult to have incorporated. Something like the Mark IV, where it has aftermarket steering wheel buttons, it has old coiled cords like what you'd have on an old at-home telephone, if you guys remember those. And they can be a little bit cumbersome. And one of my big complaints about the ones in the Mark IV is when I'm wearing shorts and those cords contact my legs, they pull my leg hair, and it's kind of uncomfortable. But with this clock spring and having that sit in place where it needs to, and hopefully this latching in appropriately, I think we should be good to go to maintain OE functionality, which will be pretty sweet. There we go. Okay, so I decided to actually torque the steering wheel down. It's a pretty important piece of the puzzle for this car, for any car for that matter. So it seemed like a worthy application of actually applying torque. So now, clip the clock spring clip into place, and once the steering wheel, or once the airbag arrives rather, I can make sure that the clock spring connection, and the airbag connection rather, actually clips into the new airbag. And if all is well there, then I'll just have to scavenge what looks like 2 fasteners off of the new airbag, or off of the old airbag for the new airbag. I can get that installed, and the steering wheel installation will be completed. And before I get the airbag actually fastened in place permanently, I'll connect it, and keeping my head and face and any vitals out of the way of it, and then go power the car on and make sure that it does not deploy. And if all of that checks out, then I can fasten the airbag in place, and the new steering wheel will be a done deal. Well, the SC's new steering wheel is completely in the car. And everything works aside from the airbag. So, horn works. And I opted against trying to splice the airbag in, since I'm essentially working with a bomb at that point in time. And that isn't something that I was extremely interested in doing, just given what was at stake. But the new wheel is in, very happy with it, looks cool. Like I showed earlier, my little ring light and the footwall light, those are functional. The interior is all back together and everything is good to go. So with that being said, and since the video its runtime is long enough at this point in time, I think that's where we're going to end off for this episode. I can't really do much more engine-wise right now, as I decided to order a billet timing belt tensioner bracket, which I'll talk more about what exactly that is, why it's a benefit in probably the next episode or the next couple of episodes. But this car is really coming together. It's really turning into something cool and something that I'm very proud of. And with all the purple pulleys on here, the engine bay is going to look infinitely better, and it'll be a huge level up, and as well as all the titanium fasteners that I'm going to put on it also. But with that being said, that'll be about the end of this one. So thank you guys, as always, for coming along on all of these different journeys and all of these different adventures with me. I know the SC has been a long-term project, and it's very close to the end at this point in time, or at least as far as I'm going to go with it right now. But beyond that, the Aristo, that is the next big project happening, and I'm just waiting on time at this point in time to make it up to accelerated with the block, the cranks, all of the parts that I have for it, so Don can do his machining magic and we can get the engine build well on the way for that car. So lots of cool things with those two projects. Getting the Mark II squared away and out on the road, and eventually getting the Mark IV back to the dyno, and hopefully before the end of this season, making it to the track with it, to finally start shaking that car down and seeing what it can do. But all those things are things we have to look forward to in the future, because right now we are done with this one. So as always, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. Check out the website for manifolds, for merch, for all things good that way, including my MCB collection. That is the newest apparel and accessory line that I have for you guys. I have all kinds of cool apparel and accessory items on there, so feel free to check it out. It's linked in the description below, and if anything there speaks to you, then feel free to pick any of it up. And if nothing there does, that's all right as well. Hopefully I offer something in the future that does speak to you and that you would like to add to your collection. But with all of that being said, that'll be the end of this one, and I will see you guys in the next episode.